Welcome back. So shopping malls have become targets in recent days with huge implications for those trying to put bread on the table. Shoprite, Pick n Pay, Woolworths, Makro, all confirming that their stores have been affected by the unrest in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. Tiger Brands that produces Albany bread and Tastic rice say the incidents of vandalism have had a material impact on operations and it has lost stock in excess of 150 million rand. Now, Pick n Pay is saying more recently in the last few hours that it wants to reassure customers in KwaZulu-Natal that teams are working flat out to bring essential supplies from Gauteng and the Western Cape. It says the reopening of the N3 between Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal helps and the relief is coming. So let's look at the overall retail picture now. We're joined by retail analyst Zwelakhe Mnguni. Mr. Mnguni, thank you for being with us. I was happy to see that Pick n Pay was saying that we've had some elevated demand for some products in recent days, but it's not like the levels we saw at the start of COVID-19. So that would be pointing to the panic buying and sort of what is available on the shelves. But firstly, how real do you think is the threat of quite deep and long-lasting shortages of some goods?
Good evening, Francis. I think this is an unfortunate situation that we are in as a country, and I think the risk of shortages continuing is elevated or exacerbated by the fact that we have the supply, some of the factories being burnt, and those factories being further downstream in the production process. So you won't be able to get value-added products if, for example, a flour plant, if it's burned, you can't get bread, or a bakery is burned, you can't get bread. So I think that is a big problem where we could have an exacerbated situation of shortages. However, I think there is hope if the situation is brought under stability, that you could then move product from areas that were not affected into areas that were affected. Longer term, there are issues like, are we going to be able to restart those businesses given what has happened? What is the longer-term solution to the challenges of unemployment and poverty? Because, yes, the issue started being about former President Zuma, but it's now moved into a direction where it is an issue of socio-economic issues that are coming to the fore. Those issues need to be addressed by the government. Maybe the government intervenes and provides some form of grant that they were doing during COVID-19, and then that alleviates the pressure, but then you have to rebuild the infrastructure that's been damaged.
Yeah, that 350 Rand unemployment grant, a lifeline for many, and so many NGOs and concerned groups calling for it to be sustained. So the little guys we know are going to be devastated long term. But if you're a big retailer, the ones that are putting a lot of food on people's tables, how easy with insurance, with Sasria, how easy can a group recover and get back on its feet if it's had some retail shops and some warehouses looted?
Yeah, I think you're quite right. So for the small guys, the challenge is enormous. So how do they get the capital back to rebuild the business? And I think that's going to be a challenge. We're going to see some of those businesses not coming back, and people are going to lose jobs for almost forever. I think where the bigger players have an advantage is where they have multiple locations of operation, multiple locations of production, multiple suppliers. And I think for them, that is going to be a lot better to basically recover and rebuild. And I think they might actually gain from this kind of situation, because the smaller guys that were competing with them, some of them would be out of the market. So certainly it would be easier for the bigger businesses, the likes of Pick n Pay, but it would definitely be very hard for the small businesses.
Yeah. Please help me with my rudimentary knowledge of supply chain management. But the way I understand it is that big groups used to have huge warehouses, and then they realized it was better to have small warehouses closer to the communities that they serve. So would that be a good thing, that not all the goods are kept in a few warehouses, but there's actually quite a lot going on across the country for most of those big chains?
Yeah, so basically what they have what they call a distribution center. which would be what you call the huge warehouse. And then you'd get then the feeding points from that distribution center that would feed into the smaller areas or the more distributed nodes. So basically, it is a benefit that those distribution centers were not impacted. Where the impact has been is lower down the supply chain. So at a point of retail, and in some instances, I mean, there's only a few of those, but there were attempts to basically raid some of the smaller distribution points. But I think overall, I mean, for the bigger players, I don't think it's a train smash. It's a loss of trading days for certain areas, so not the whole country. So I don't think the impact on the big retailers is going to be that material. I mean, I definitely don't think it would be even percent in terms of the impact where they've lost trading. I think the impact is more on the rebuild it, and that would be where SABC comes in to assist the mall owners to basically rebuild that infrastructure.
Finally, what's the picture for retail overall? Because there were signs of, there was good news. The latest figures of Stats SA showed an increase in retail sales in May compared to April. But does this mean now we go backwards for a while?
I don't necessarily think so. I think we might actually be under pressure for maybe 2-3 months. And again, the situation is very fluid on the ground, depending on how the stability is brought about. But if we assume that there is stability from this point on, I certainly think that we would be able to get retail sales coming back, and we might have maybe 1 or 2 months blip in the numbers, and then we get back to normal. The other thing that also could make the blip look worse is when they said they were stopping the grants, because those grants had a material impact on the retail sales. I think we saw in the retail numbers since 2020, second half of 2020, those numbers were very robust, despite the fact that there was unemployment, there was lockdown and all those things. So I do think if we get that grant back, we might actually be able to hold up relatively well on the retail sales, but there might be shortages of goods, and that might spark some inflation. So that might get prices going up, and that might have an impact on the economy longer term.
All right, and it raises an interesting question. I wonder if the anger around that grant being stopped has really fed into the current situation, if things might have been different. At least some good news about the ability of the big retail chains to bounce back. That was retail analyst Zwelakhe Mnguni.